I said to myself, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good." But that also proved to be meaningless. "Laughter," I said, "is madness, and what does pleasure accomplish?" I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet, when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. This is the word of the Lord.
Well, good morning, everyone. As I said, we're looking at Ecclesiastes over this week and next week, just having a think a bit about what is life all about. As we start today, I want to introduce you to Ethel, Beryl, Maud, and Hey. They're my chickens. So if you look there, it's a bit of an intense look. If you go to the next picture, it's a bit of a better, more sort of... so they're cruising around my background. I hang out with them, and they... poo all over my lawn and stuff and get a bit of fertilizing. But they're ravenous. They're always eating. They're always looking to eat. They sit on my back step waiting for me to open the door, give them more food. And if you look at the next slide, it's kind of really obvious where they live and where they don't live. They live on the left. And they're always kind of trying to put their head through the chicken wire to nibble on the grass. They're always trying to get some of those tender grass shoots. Have you ever heard of the grass is always greener? Literally, the grass is greener when it comes to them. They're always trying to get out. But that's the idea, right? The grass is always greener. It's this idea that as good as my life might be, there is something better somewhere else. And maybe you found yourself in a place like this before. You've been scrolling on social media on your phone, or maybe talking to a friend or having coffee with your colleague, and they start telling you, maybe they're telling you where they're going over Christmas. Or you see on social media a friend at the latest viral cafe, or you're just talking with a friend and they have the latest iPhone or something. And you feel the grass is always a bit greener. Suddenly your phone is just not that good anymore. What you brought for lunch today at work is a bit lousy. And you realize the holiday you've got planned is just really nothing compared to what you've just heard about. We find ourselves at a place where we kind of long for more. And we just read two parts of the Bible that remind us kind of this reality. The son that wanted his father's inheritance so he could experience the world. This sage that wanted to experience the desires of his heart in order to find satisfaction. Each of them said, if I have, and fill in the blank, then life will be good. Then I'll have enough. I wonder how you might fill in the blank. And so the question that we're just asking ourselves this morning is it possible to find a sense of contentment, of satisfaction with what we find in the world? On the back part of your order of service, there are three things about this idea of pleasure we're hoping that will sort of give us an orientation to find a sense of rest. The first is that pleasure does supposedly promise much. Pleasure does supposedly promise much. Ecclesiastes, in many ways, is this reflection of what we might call a wise man, a sage, a kingly figure, and he's kind of reflecting on life. And he's thinking, well, if I just enjoy myself, will that be enough? Will I be satisfied if I do all the things that I've ever dreamt of? Well, I find myself at rest, happy, pleasant. And so in the passage, it's his kind of reflections on that. Verse 3, he says, I tried cheering myself with wine, embracing folly. I'm just going to enjoy myself. Might sound like his version of pleasure is going to the pub every night, getting drunk. But notice there, he talks about his mind still guiding him with wisdom. And so he's saying that I'm going to pursue pleasure, but I'm going to do it intentionally and strategically. I'm going to analyze life and try to optimize for its greatest happiness. So if my pleasure comes from driving, I'm going to be driving a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, not that Toyota Corolla that I have sitting in my backyard. Or if pleasure comes from traveling, well, I'm not going to bother with glamping on the southern coast of New South Wales. No, I'm off to Bora Bora, 5-star, all-you-can-eat resort. That's where I'm going. That is, as I look at life, I'm going to figure out where is the best possible place to go so that I can truly test whether pleasure will bring me satisfaction. And in our passage, that's what he does. Look at verses 4 to 8. This man builds houses, plants vineyards, constructs beautiful gardens, has many sexual conquests, owns more sheep and donkeys than anyone else, has abundant wealth. He's done everything his heart's desires. And to some degree, I think we can be a little bit like this man, think that if I have enough, if I have the right things in my life, then I'll be satisfied. For some of us, it's in what we have or the experiences that we enjoy. Retail therapy, Black Friday's coming up, we're like, okay, that's going to bring a bit of joy in my life. Or maybe the holidays that we have planned, that's what we're thinking about to bring us happiness. For the others of us, though, it's our careers. Our happiness is found in what we do, the influence we get to wield, or being able to be successful in our careers. Others of us, we don't care about work. We just work to get money. Actually, what we care about is feeling love. We long for a romantic relationship. If I have that, then life will be good. Maybe for some of us, it's our kids. Having them thrive and flourish, that's what brings us a sense of joy and satisfaction. And so often, it's not just one of these things, it's multiple. If I have these things in the right percentage, in the right order, then life will be good. But I'm not sure about you, but I don't have unlimited amounts of money or time or freedom. You don't always get the ideal job or that romantic relationship you want. Well, love isn't always requited. And therefore, you so often get to a place in which you're like, I don't have all that I want, but if I did have all that I want, then life would be good. It's really interesting to note, verse 10 of our passage in Ecclesiastes, this man denied himself nothing. It's important to know that this was likely a king reflecting on life. You might say he was the ancient equivalent of Elon Musk or Bill Gates. He had all the riches at his disposal. He could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And so he's kind of a bit like our representative. If he can find joy and happiness and rest in the things of this world, then maybe we have a chance one day when we have enough. But if he can't, well, that's a bit of a problem for us, because what hope do we have? I like to think about this king and what he was doing in life, like going to a buffet. Look, there's a picture of the Epicurean buffet on the screen. You might have been there. Epicurean's in the casino down in Barangaroo, and it's got lobsters and prawns and sashimi and all kinds of delicious food. And I think of that a bit like this man. He had all the options before him. And if you've been to a buffet, you know you don't just have to stick with one thing. You have everything. You eat it all. You can be wasteful and indulgent. You could eat half an oyster and just leave the rest on your plate. Don't need to finish it. I'm going to go for the lobster now. I'm going to have the sashimi. I'm going to chew a bit and then spit it back out because I can have anything. Is that your strategy when you go to a buffet? You just take whatever you want whenever you want it. You don't need to even eat it. You can just taste it and then put it back down your plate. But if you've been to a buffet, you'll know that there's a point in which you start to get a bit full. You start to hit the max stomach capacity. And I've heard of friends that go to the toilets to try to, digest a bit better. And so you would think, toilet, you're getting a bit dodgy. No, they do steps on the toilet. They step up and down to try to get the digestion working so that they can get more food in during the buffet. Some people start massaging their stomachs to kind of like digest faster. It's all there, and they just try to get it. Like, if I have enough, then I'll be happy. But I'm not sure if you've got to the point, I've done it before, where it starts to hit a pain threshold. You want more, but it's just painful. It hurts. And you're just like, oh, I think that's a bit like pleasure. It promises much, but in the end, if we indulge ourselves fully, it doesn't deliver. It doesn't deliver. And there's a sense of disappointment when it comes to pleasure. I wish everyone could get rich and famous and see it's not the answer. If I said that to you, you're like, well, how much money do you possibly have, and could you actually test this? But this was said by Jim Carrey. You might not know him. He was an actor, a comedian back in the 90s, show my age now. It's interesting. He says, I had it kind of all, but it just wasn't that good. And that's what this man from Ecclesiastes says as well. Verse 11, look there with me. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. This path that he sort of put himself down to indulge and enjoy everything, it didn't really satisfy. It promised much, but it failed to deliver. And I think there's two things that he says about this path that he pursues of pleasure. The last thing was, he says nothing was gained under the sun. Nothing was gained under the sun. That is, the good things didn't last. There was no real gain. My wife and I went out. We had a voucher to this Italian restaurant that we used the other day, and so we went to have this nice long lunch. The food was beautiful. Beautiful smoked trout, salmon crudo, stracciatella salad. You're like, what is this kind of food? Sounds weird. It was so good that even the bread was really nice. I ate all the bread, and that's something you shouldn't do because it just fills you up. But it was just really good. And it was so delightful, I couldn't even finish desserts. I was rolling out of there. It was amazing. And so I didn't even bother having afternoon tea. I barely had dinner. I was just really quite content until I started getting hungry again. The pleasure had sort of worn off. I was hunting around the kitchen looking for food. That's the observation that this man is making. There is nothing really gained. There's nothing that really lasts. And so if we place our happiness in the things of this world, we know that they don't always last. Our latest iPhone either breaks when we drop it, or it becomes obsolete and we have to get another one. The relationships that can delight your souls can so quickly enter disagreement over the smallest kinds of things. Why do you have to put your socks there all the time, huh? Money, as good as that can be inflated away. And with that, our hopes of buying more and more. Things don't really last. And that's what the Ecclesiastes man says. Things don't last. And so why bother pursuing them? But it doesn't just say nothing's gained under the sun. He also says everything was meaningless. You see there, that was another one of his reflections. Everything was meaningless. As much as he gave himself enjoyed, it didn't really satisfy. Speaking of phones, back in my younger days when I just wanted the latest phone, I remember the iPhone 4. It was a long time ago. We're on iPhone 16 now. iPhone 4, I waited at the Apple store at 5 a.m. queuing up with hundreds of people. It was a joyful occasion. We got to the front of the line. I bought my phone. I was really happy. I showed it all off to the people at the office. After a week or two, I was like, oh, this is a phone. As amazing as that was, it just wasn't that great after time. Maybe you don't care about technology, but I'm sure you've got something in your life you got really excited about. But maybe a week or two later or a month later, it just becomes ordinary. That's a psychological term. It's called the hedonic treadmill. That is, psychologically, as happy as we are, our happiness becomes the new baseline. And so we need to be constantly looking and grasping at more in order to be satisfied, because what we have never constantly makes us happy. Things so often fade away. Do you know this guy up here? You may or may not know this guy. This is Justin Bieber. I should have asked. This is Justin Bieber. He broke to fame when he was 15 years old. He was a pop sensation, singing his hit song, Baby. I won't sing it for you, but that was his hit song. And he had everything. He had fame. Everyone in the world knew who he was. He had untold riches. And yet, if you read about his life, he says he had a deep sense of sadness. He says, I didn't feel normal. I didn't have a normal childhood. I couldn't hang out with my friends. I was just being brought place to place. Listen to what he says. There was a sense of still yearning for more. It was like I had all this success, and it was still like I'm still sad, and I'm still in pain, and I have all these unresolved issues. He goes on. And I thought all the success was going to make everything good. And so for me, the drugs were a numbing agent to continue to get through. I see, sometimes we think if I just had more, then that would be enough. But so often the thing that we hear from people that seem to have it all is, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. People still sense a sense of deep emptiness in their lives. Pleasure, satisfaction, happiness promises much, but so often fails to deliver. In that same article by Justin Bieber, he says, well, what is this worth if I'm still feeling empty inside? What's the point of it all? So we must ask ourselves, well, what is the place of all this pleasure? What is the place of all pleasure? The story from Luke 15 that we heard read out before was a son who basically rejected his father. I prefer the gifts more than the one who gives them. I want your money. I don't want relationship with you. And so this son grasps at his inheritance, leaves his father, and pursues a life of pleasure. Ultimately, he finds himself with his riches running dry. And it reminds us so much of what we've been talking about. As good as the good things are, they don't last. They don't satisfy. And so the question we must ask is, what do we do with this longing for more, to find ourselves satisfied, to find ourselves happy, and yet constantly unable to find rest in that? C.S. Lewis was a British author, and he writes this: creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for these desires exists. A baby feels hunger, well, there is such a thing as food. Duckling wants to swim, well, there is such a thing as water. If I find myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. C.S. Lewis, this author, points to this thing. He recognizes this desire, this thing that leads us to many things in life, to find a sense of happiness and rest. And he says, if you can't find satisfaction in this world, then maybe it's pointing you somewhere else. And so when Jesus breaks on the scene, we heard those words in call to worship. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. The Bible's answer to our longing is to point us to the God that created us, to point us beyond the things of this world to the one that created this world. And so Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Unlike the great buffet that ends in pain, or the tasting menu that is great but ultimately fades, a relationship with Jesus, experiencing him, is the thing that satisfies the deepest desires of our heart. Because it's in relationship with him we find ourselves fully known. He knows everything about us, and yet still loves us. In relationship with him we find ourselves no longer anxious, because we know that he knows all things and generously provides for all that we need. He is in control, so we need not worry about what comes next. And so that's the invitation for each and every one of us, to be people that seek relationship with Jesus to find rest. What does that look like? What does it look like to seek God out? I think the orientation from our first story, the son that rejects his father, is instructive. The son comes to his kind of realization that actually happiness is not found away from my family. It's probably found with my family. And he turns himself back, seeking to head back to his family. But he recognizes in his actions, he's been not just rude, but he's rejected his father. And so he commits himself to say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I've broken this relationship. Will you forgive me? And that's the invitation by God. If you want relationship with him, we just need to recognize that actually we have been searching and seeking after things of this world. To say, I've done that, but I want you because you're the one that satisfies. I thought these things would be good, but actually as good as they are, they point beyond themselves to you. How does God respond? I think he responds much like The father in this story, the father says, we read, while he was still a long way off, the father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The posture of the God of creation is compassion and not condemnation. As people turn back to him, he doesn't wave his finger and say like, oh, it's about time. What's gotten into you? He says, come. I've been longing to meet you. And so the question that I just want to pose to you this morning is, well, do you find yourself at rest? Or do you long for more? Jesus invites you to a deeper and fuller experience of him this morning. Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, the invitation is to turn, enjoy the good things of this world, but don't lose sight of the one that gives them. I'm going to pray now that God would help us realize this. Then we're going to hear a bit more from Vile as to how she's kind of wrestled with this in her own life. Let me pray.